Hello. Um, while I'm in between looking back at the TV series that I loved as a child, I'm just gonna call it, make it a category bits and pieces, which is what I'll call just the random stuff that I do in between um, the bigger projects of watching all of the original 5 seasons of Are You Afraid of the Dark, etc., stuff like that. And this one is just a follow up to my movie reaction to the Suicide Squad, and also uh, some time ago my I guess reaction to the limited series Loki, um, and around the theme of seeing bad guys become the heroes. And it's just a thought that I had since making those videos, connecting the two, which is that I know that these movies are, the hope is that, and the Loki series, the hope is that everybody will pay money for viewing them, but to the extent that they are for anyone in particular, they're for the fans of the comic books. And in the case of the Suicide Squad, back when the first Suicide Squad movie came out or was announced, I had no idea what the Suicide Squad was, and I learned it is the Justice League slash the Avengers, but for DC villains. And so I thought, oh, that's interesting. Uh, so the Joker and Mr. Freeze and Lex Luthor. That was what I was looking at it from. Which is to say, that movie, other than Harley Quinn, and the Joker was in that movie, but other than Harley Quinn, every character in that movie was new to me. And because maybe I had seen them back as a kid when I was watching the Batman animated series, but I hadn't read the comics, and I just had no frame of reference. Um, Will Smith was in that movie, and I'm used to Will Smith as the hero, as the good guy. I cannot think of a movie off the top of my head, and I've seen all but one or two of his movies where he plays the bad guy. And he doesn't play the bad guy in that movie either, because in that movie, the heroes are villains. So he is a villain, but he's also the hero. Even though he even has a line says we're the bad guys. They hammer that home. And the thought that I had in between my The Suicide Squad video and this is that they have to hammer that home, saying we're the bad guys over and over again, because at least for the movies and for those of us who only will know them from the movies, in the world, the universes that the movies build, they have to remind us that they're the bad guys because we haven't seen them as the bad guys. Even the Joker, who was arguably a bad guy in that movie, yes, we've seen him as the bad guy in just about every incarnation of Batman, but um, but we haven't seen Harley Quinn as a bad guy. She's been in 3 movies and she has not been the villain in any of the movies. Um, we hadn't seen Deadshot. They have kind of they made tiny little movies to play at the beginning of the original Suicide Squad movie, and one of them showing the characters getting arrested. One of them shows Batman apprehending Harley Quinn and the Joker, or Batman apprehending Will Smith's Deadshot character. Um, but and we see Deadshot taking out someone at some point. Um, a device that was very very smartly not used in the more recent movie, but just to show, oh look, there are the villains. See them being the villain, and that's kind of where I kind of thought that I'm not appreciating these movies as much as I could be. Maybe if I'd read the comics, or if the universes had just if the DC universe had just been done differently, because I could be watching characters that I'd seen and rooted against, and then I'd be watching a movie where now I'm supposed to root for them. And that is the challenge that I don't get to have, that again maybe comic book readers get to have, but casual viewers like me don't get to have, which is that dissonance that probably the original idea for the Suicide Squad was intended to create in the mind of the viewer, that I hate this person, but I want them to succeed now. And the reason I tie this in with Loki is um, I, uh, I had seen I saw the Avengers back in 2013 or 14 when it popped up on then HBO Go, but I didn't really remember it. But I kind of knew he was the bad guy because I remembered him being tossed around by the Hulk. Uh, but it kind of vanished from my memory, buried under all the other MCU and superhero stuff that happened since. And then the next time I saw him was in the third Thor movie, which was the first Thor movie that I saw. And in that one, he's teamed up with Thor. He is not the villain in that movie. And but that was my more clear Loki movie. And then I went back. I did this thing where I arranged for the malevolent supernatural force I live with to get all 3 Thor movies on DVD for her birthday, and I had recently, by coincidence, purchased a new DVD player because the 13-year-old one that I had was starting to show its age, and I wanted to protect DVDs because DVDs are still important to me, as I have demonstrated in other videos, and I saw him be the villain in those 2, and then he's got a couple of moments in Infinity War and Endgame that lead to the Loki series. And so in the Loki series, he is the title character, he is the central character, he is the central characters in many ways, since there's more than one of him, more than one version of him. But it was still, because I don't particularly like the first few Thor movies as much as I like the third one, so I've seen the third one more often. Similarly, the first Avengers movie is not one of the MCU movies that I go back to over and over again. So he was, by the time he's in his series, and he's a villain now leading a series, and now I'm supposed to be rooting for him, as I kind of already did in the beginning of Infinity War and in the third Thor movie, Ragnarok, it's still doesn't have the feel of rooting for someone I shouldn't be rooting for. Although it's a little bit more than with Harley Quinn and the rest of them in the Suicide Squad, who I do root for, the closest I come in the Suicide Squad is when Peacemaker does his heel turn, is I'm told the phrase from the world of wrestling, from which John Cena hails, and I started rooting against him, and that felt good, because that felt like all this time I'm rooting against vague ideas. I guess I was rooting against the 13th Doctor, or whatever number he is, but that felt good because it felt like this is the natural order of things now. And before, he'd been just a fun character, along with all the others, along with the wonderful King Shark, the wonderful Ratcatcher 2, who I cannot, I mean, again, supposedly she's a villain. I cannot see her as a villain because I see her in this movie. She is sympathetic. We see her flashbacks with Taika Waititi, and they're wonderful. But she's supposed to be a villain. Harley Quinn is the one where it most sticks out, just because she is such a flashy, shiny object in these movies. But she's the only one, really, who I can see being, like I think I might have said I might have said it on Twitter or in my other The Suicide Squad video, I think she's the best Joker. I feel like I don't need a Batman movie where we get a new Joker, whether it's Jared Leto or what's his name, who won the Oscar? Not Heath Ledger, who won the Oscar, but Joaquin Phoenix. I don't need a Batman movie with one of those as the Joker, even if they are the Jokers of this era of the DC world. I'd like to see a Batman movie where it's just Harley Quinn versus Batman, and maybe bring in stuff. Maybe that's the one where she has her thing with Poison Ivy, but where she's the villain and Batman is the hero, whether it's Batfleck or Battinson, just a movie where she can be a villain, because her her way of being a hero is very villainous, and like I said, she's got my favorite line. It's 3 or 4 words. It's apropos of nothing. It's random out of, and it's the best line in the thing. So a movie where she's villain, and I guess that would be maybe it would be like the opposite of this. Although these aren't, I guess we're rooting against the United States government agency that's in charge of the Suicide Squad, ostensibly the good guys. So, and we're rooting against them because Amanda Waller is being so mean to the people that we are rooting for. But that would be a great thing for me because I've rooted for Harley Quinn at least twice. I don't know if I was really rooting for her in the first Suicide Squad movie. But I guess I was. But to now get to root against her, if she's facing off against my favorite superhero, whatever incarnation of my favorite superhero, which is Batman, that would be kind of what I feel like the Suicide Squad movies and the Loki series should have been, where I hate this character, but now I'm rooting for them. It would be, I love this character, but now I've got to root against her. So I think that's where I'll end this. Just this thought that I had of what I'm personally missing from the experience of these movies. That doesn't mean that they're bad movies or that I would do them differently, just that it's something that some people have with them from having read the comics that I don't, that hopefully someday I would like to feel. And maybe the key to that is putting one of these people, these villains, into a movie where they're actually the villain. And fingers crossed for Harley Quinn versus Ben Affleck as Batman. Seatbelts, everyone.